good morning once again. Those very important figures and salient figures that give you the contribution of the mining sector to the overall economy. But one figure that we must not shy away from is the fact that in 2022, as a matter of fact, that its contribution to GDP did decrease slightly to 0.3 percentage point. And the Minerals Council talking about that those logistic issues as well as the rolling blackouts impacting on their sector and their performance. Also the value of mining production overall, Sakina, in 2022 increased to 1.18 trillion rands. This is up from 1.1 trillion rands in 2021. So it shows you about the significant contribution that the sector is making. However, there are challenges. Currently, the Minerals Council also embroiled in somewhat of a tiff with Transnet over logistic issues. But I have invited the Chief Economist of the Minerals Councils of South Africa, Mr. Henk Langenhoven, to give us an overview of where exactly they stand with their issue with Transnet and exactly how much more we can expect the contribution of mining sector to make to the overall economy. Simply because the South African economy is not doing well and is projected not, the prognosis is not looking good as well. Mr. Langenhoven, thank you, and thank you so much for your patience. Every year, the Facts and Figures handbook, and of course, giving us a great overview of the impact of the mining sector to the economy, doing quite well, but still some challenges. Summarize what you have found with regards to 2022.
Well, we were very glad that we did grow, and a lot of it is thanks to the commodity prices. But as you say, the challenges are really on a physical level, physical production in terms because of electricity availability, because of logistics being constrained. So real output declined slightly. And as you said, our contribution to GDP slightly down to about 500 billion. I think the achievement was that we've been able to grow exports slightly despite the constraints, and we have also employed more people than in 2019. We are actually higher than 2019 numbers now. There are very few sectors that can actually say that. Perhaps the worrying issue is the fact that the uncertainties, not only domestically in terms of physical support for production, but internationally, where commodity prices would go is really up to anybody's guess. The war in the Ukraine, the energy situation. I think what plays a lot into our favor is the fact that we're in a new industrial revolution in terms of energy and low carbon economy, and we have a lot of those minerals, and nobody really knows where that technology will go. So there's a sort of an attitude of we have to have it just in case, instead of the old adage that you have to have it just in time. And that has been really supporting our prices. It has softened slightly, but it's still giving us a heads up on the previous year.
Yeah. So the Minerals Council obviously has been in the news with the tiff with Transnet over logistical issues. Earlier on in the media briefing, the CEO mentioned that the economy is losing about 1 billion rands a day, the overall economy, not necessarily the mining industry, over these logistical issues. Have you had a conversation with the CEO or the board of Transnet, and are you still calling for the head of the CEO of Transnet?
That letter that was leaked was not from us, and it's unfortunate that it's happened, but we had since, actually before the leakage took place, we had very, very good interaction with the board, and it's continuing on our board and the Transnet board level. And there's a sort of a steering committee that are looking into it, and it's the senior officials of the different two boards. And I think the most important thing is there are 4 practical corridor technical teams that have representatives from us and from Transnet. And the initial indications are giving us actually hope that we're going to try and solve some of the short-term issues. Of course, we know there's a backlog in maintenance, a backlog in availability of locomotives. That is a little bit of a longer-term issue, but very intense and open discussions to try and solve this in all of our interest, because Transnet is losing a lot of money themselves.
Yeah. You did mention that there's a significant amount of money that had been lost last year. If I'm not mistaken, around 3 billion rands or so that had been lost because of that. And I can imagine that you'll be looking at curbing those losses. Are you confident that this meeting and these interventions you speak of will at least arrest those losses going forward?
Yeah, we think the number is much higher. We think it was actually in the order of 50 billion. In coal alone, we think it was 30 billion. We are optimistic. We have sort of set to ourselves, there are parameters set of what would improvement entail, and it is measured on both sides. But we set ourselves a target of evaluating it by the end of March to see whether we get traction, pun intended, on progress. And we really, but the signs are very good. There's very regular interaction between the teams. And I mean, we are the biggest customer, and we really want to contribute to it. So we are hopeful.
Yeah. Let's get into the energy crisis. We see that some mining companies, such as Harmony, are already, abandoning the grid, as it were, and looking at alternative energy sources. If I'm not mistaken, they are on their second phase of erecting or building their solar panel system. Are you expecting more of your members to go that route, abandoning the grid and looking at more self-reliance measures?
Absolutely. There's something like 7.5 gigs of projects, so in other words, 7,500 megawatts worth of projects that will come online. We think about 1,000 will come online this year. But it's not really abandoning the grid. We would be able to provide for ourselves between 20 and 30% of what we need. Mining is I always say, we're cooking 24 hours a day and we need the same heat. You can't run the smelter on 80 degrees, it has to run at 100 degrees. And that we need baseload for, coming from a typical coal-powered power station or nuclear or gas power station, which we can't. It's completely uneconomical for the mining sector to build something like that for themselves. But to have a 20 or 30% cushion is actually, it seems, where we are going. The unfortunate situation is that it does take time. Some of it related to the bureaucratic hoops that we had to jump through, but simply because of the physical nature of putting these systems on the ground and constructing it. So the flow of electrons into the system will start this year, and it will accelerate probably over the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. Just before I let you go, Mr. Langenhoven, Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy, Mr. Gwede Mantashe, is about to take the stage in a few minutes, opening the conference formally for 2023. What are the most important things we are hoping to hear from government about the way forward in sustaining the industry?
We are hoping for a big announcement on the cadastre system, which is really a management system for application for managing of the state's resources, because I mean we are renting the minerals licenses, and because that will give a huge impetus in the beginning of the pipeline, if I can call it that. Without exploration, it's just a fact of life that every day that you mine, you're closer to your close of mine. So we are really hoping that that would have a major short-term impact, and we know it can be done. So we're holding thumbs for that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Henk Langenhoven. Sakina, Mr. Henk Langenhoven is the Chief Economist at the Minerals Council of South Africa, and giving us just a rundown of what is contained in their Facts and Figures handbook for 2022. Basically, it gives a picture of the mining industry in 2022, which shows that some improvements have been made and how they remain a major contributor to the economy, job creation, and also paying off tax, etc. In just a few minutes, the Minister of Mineral Resources, Mr. Gwede Mantashe, will be taken to the stage, formally announcing and opening the conference. And it will be interesting to hear what he says to the investors, to stakeholders, about what government is planning to do to help the miners, particularly on the energy front. And with that, let me hand over to studio.